Why did orcs hate elves? Was this inherited through their bloodline or through their torture? Or was this simply taught by the powers above them? That's what I'm going to be discussing today. Hopefully you enjoy it. Hello everybody, and welcome to the channel. This is Gone with Gandalf, and it's Friday. That means it's a lore video. Thank you very much to all the new subscribers. There's been quite a lot of you, and to all the old ones as well. Thank you for still coming back. So this question comes from a super secret anonymous source that I cannot divulge, but I am going to do my best to answer this. The orcs, of course, they were made by Melkor in the time known as the Year of the Trees. This was a very, very, very long time before the Years of the Sun, which would then become the First Age, Second Age, Third Age, and so on. The orcs were said to have been once elves that had then been kidnapped and tortured into this maligned form. As Melkor could not create his own life, he could only kind of grab things that are already given life and twist and morph them into something which he would prefer. And orcs were just a kind of marred creation and a mockery of elves. It is said in the Silmarillion that, and deep in their dark hearts, the orcs loathed the master whom they served in fear, the maker only of their misery. So immediately you would think that the orcs, they do have an element of free will. However, there's only really one choice that they can make, and that is to serve Melkor, else they will be disposed of. Melkor, he hated the elves, and he hated them because they had been deemed worthy to inherit Arda. Arda was created during the music of the Ainur by the Ainur and Eroe Iluvatar, and Melkor disliked them because he did not think that they were worthy, and he himself, of course, wished to be the king of Arda. And due to this, the orcs who were enslaved by Melkor, they had to do his bidding, and therefore there is never a single instance of orcs and elves fighting as one. There are instances of orcs fighting with men, not against them, but with them on the same side, as well as dwarves. Let's talk about the enslavement of the orcs then, because there is the element of, yes, they were ruled by fear, but were they also mind controlled, okay? So there's a book called Morgoth's Ring. It's not an actual ring, it's just kind of showing the similarity between Sauron's ring and Morgoth's ring. It's a metaphor because his ring was all of Arda. He inseminated all of Arda with a piece of his power. So by doing so, of course, he lost some of his power by kind of putting his hands down and kind of letting it disperse. But then some of this power then went into the orcs. I'm not saying that they gained extra powers or anything like that, but perhaps by him doing so, these orcs were then gained some kind of like mind control effect, or a mind control effect was placed upon them. And it seems like this kind of mind control effect required Morgoth to be around, because when he was taken in chains to Valinor, the orcs posed very little threat to anyone. There were some scuffles with the dwarves because they both like to be in the dark places of the deeps of the mountains, but they didn't really bother the elves so much, like those ones in Beleriand. The Sindar of Beleriand actually thought that these orcs that they saw kind of coming in from the east, they were deformed Avari, those elves that stayed behind on the great journey, and actually not too far away from the actual fact there. However, it is clear that the orcs, to become a coherent force, they need that driving force behind them, a slaver's whip perhaps, and this is what happens then when Morgoth returns from Aman to Middle-earth, and then he takes the reins again, and the orcs go into Beleriand and cause havoc, kill a few elves and whatnot, and this is the first of many, many battles in Beleriand. So perhaps all this really means is that the orcs don't necessarily hate the elves. It's only those that are actually controlling them. They, of course, really, really detest the elves. So, are the orcs all that bad? Well, let's go a bit deeper. You have the fall of Morgoth at the end of the First Age, following the War of Wrath. And at this point, you get all the orcs kind of disperse again. They have no real leader. And because of this, they are no real threat. It's only something like if you're a traveller, you're going around the hills, you might get attacked by a band, okay? It's not the end of the world. It's only going to trouble you for the rest of your life. But then, Sauron would end up taking the reins, kind of like into the middle part of the Second Age, because up until that point he was kind of moping around, didn't really know what he wanted to do. But how was he then suddenly able to actually control and dominate the orcs? This comes back again to that kind of thing of enslavement through the mind or through terror. And Sauron certainly had access to both. Of course, he was a very powerful Maiar, and he also was incredibly scary. And a lot of these orcs probably would have known of who Sauron was, despite the fact that they have very limited intelligence and knowledge. And Sauron, he also hated the elves. He detested them, but for slightly different reasons to Morgoth. See, Morgoth, he wanted to rule Arda kind of out of spite, and he kind of didn't really care if he destroyed it. Sauron, he saw himself as the only one that could bring the realm into order. Now that the Valar had abandoned it, in his view, he saw the elves as a minor, well, not as a minor hindrance, but as a hindrance. They were getting in the way, so he kind of had to deal with them somehow. It's clear that even though he did not create the orcs, it was his former boss, he was still able to kind of make them or coerce them into hating the elves too, and kind of coming into a cohesive army. You see this mainly with the war of Sauron and the elves, but was he able to do this via his tyranny, via fear, or was he able to do this with his mind control tricks? Sauron, though, he did have something that Morgoth never did, and that was the One Ring. The One Ring he created in 1600 of the Second Age. This was about 100 years before the War of Sauron and the Elves. So that is a very long time then for him to perhaps pop it on and then use that power, that wielded power that he now had, to coerce all of these orcs to come into a very large army and then march as one. Of course, I did explain a little bit more about how Sauron's ring actually worked upon his finger. I made a previous video, which I'll link somewhere around here so I don't have to explain it all over again. But regardless, we know that this definitely worked because in the disaster of the Gladden Fields, which was happening in Third Age, second year, that is when Isildur died. Now, there's a direct quotation from the Unfinished Tales, one of my favourite books, and it goes like this: "And though it was unknown to them, the ring was still laden with Sauron's evil will, and called to all his servants for their aid." Now, this was directed to the orcs that were attacking Isildur. And it goes on to say that there was a fierce and relentless hatred. Now, they don't know what is powering them. They just are doing it. They're fighting more ferociously and without fear or failure. They absolutely need to attack this group of men, but they don't know why. They don't know why themselves. This, to me, suggests that they are is this kind of mind control that is upon them. And that kind of thing does bode the question, did Sauron also have a greater hold of the will of the orc population than Morgoth ever did? It's an interesting one, but I'm not going to be answering that one here today. That requires its own video. Now, to finalise this point then, why did the orcs hate the elves? And was it just a mind control thing? Was it taught by them, by Sauron and Morgoth? Or was it just inherited by their being as an orc? Honestly, I'm going to cop out on this one and just say it depends. There's no one answer here. They feared Sauron, they feared Morgoth, they had some semblance of free will, but then they also were driven to actions that they would not have personally done had it not been for the slaver's whip behind them. So did they hate elves? Well, yes, they did. They hated everything. They hated all manner of beautiful things. They only made crude objects. They didn't like anything that wasn't just functional. They were incredibly messy. In many ways, they were just like a small human, a small toddler, or a bull in a china shop. So, to also answer the gentleman's question from the beginning, why did orcs hate elven swords so much? Well, as I just said, it was a beautiful thing made by fair hands, and what could be worse than a sharp blade such as that? So yeah, pretty disgusting all in all. Anyway, I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you have any suggestions, you can pop them down in the comments, but thank you very much for watching. I am Game with Gandalf, and good day.